Welcome to another episode of Meal Prep Monday. I'm your host, Allison Schaaf, and today, I'm celebrating 10 years of Prep Dish. Wow, it's really kind of crazy. I mean, in some ways, I know it's been 10 years, but that's a long time. So, one of my kind of go-to styles for these episodes, if you've been listening for a while, you know I like to do lessons learned. So I thought in honor of 10 years of Prep Dish, I would do 10 lessons learned over the past 10 years. Before that, a quick background that I knew that 10 years was coming up, and it's kind of like there's different ways you can mark the 10 years. So basically it was 10 years ago, the beginning of the year is when I kind of really started working towards creating Prep Dish. I believe the very first version of the website launched July of 2012. So it was kind of exactly 10 years ago this month, which is why we picked the month of July, but there's just so many milestones along the way. But in kind of preparing for July and doing a few special things here at Prep Dish for the 10-year anniversary, I pulled up an original form that I filled out for the designer who created the original website, as well as the meal plan. So the meal plan, kind of the icons that we have and the format, all of that is still the same, right? Like it's still the same design. We've changed a few little things, but it's the same design that designer created 10 years ago. So that's kind of crazy. And reading through the questionnaire that she gave me kind of is like, okay, give me some background and like, what's your vision for this? So that I can help create this website and these, documents that you're needing. And I was reading through that. And the crazy thing is so much that I wrote down in that original form, it actually stayed the same. So that was a bit surprising even for me. Like, I know I've kind of always had this vision and, things have changed and evolved along the way. We have these super fast plans now where the meal prep's a lot quicker. And so, we've evolved and improved, but gosh, like so much of what I envisioned is actually exactly still the way it is today. So to me, that was pretty interesting to reflect back on. And that leads into, so again, I have 10 lessons here. I think I can get through them in one episode. So we'll see. But the first one, and this is kind of why I gave that intro, is have a plan. I wrote it down. I had this vision. I had a plan, and it happened, and it's still here. It's still this thing that we still call Prep Dish. So, but putting it into writing, I think, having the plan and then putting it into writing, there's something powerful for that. And I do want to back up. I didn't mention this in the intro. So, sometimes these episodes, I'll use business examples, but with these 10, there's lessons learned through creating Prep Dish. So they're kind of business lessons, but in general, I think they're all just kind of life lessons. Because I know, maybe some of you out there are entrepreneurs, but many of you aren't. That's fine. And I think most of these lessons, they're not really from the lens of like, these are the lessons to build a business. It's more like, hey, these are just lessons that I learned in building a business that are really just important life lessons. So having a plan, putting it in writing. And then the second one is just trusting that it'll happen, like really working towards that, having confidence. I know in the beginning, people sometimes didn't understand what I was doing. Not sometimes, a lot of times didn't understand what I was doing and trying to build an online business. And I had to have that had to come from me. That had to kind of come from this inner knowing and trusting in myself, because there wasn't anyone else out there that was just like, really pushing me. It was really myself. Then number 3, have an internal support system. So important. I probably don't talk about them enough on this podcast, but I know I do sometimes talk about, the team at Prep Dish, but, having people that can support me along the way is the only reason I'm still here 10 years later, like having people that, help with customer service and all of the areas where I'm not the expert or not the best at the job, which is actually honestly most of what makes Prep Dish run is not me. So having that support system has been really key. And then for number 4, I put having an external support system. So those are the people that are not, internal working for PrepDish, but the groups of women or other entrepreneurs that I meet with, I have groups that I meet with, once a month where we do check-ins. I have accountability groups that I've been a part of, masterminds, just along the way, a lot of different friends, family support systems that have been there for me. And that's been a piece that's been key. Number 5, systems. So, something that we go into depth on some of these podcast episodes, right? Like I have one on batching that I recently recorded, and it goes into like having these systems to make sure everything runs properly. And I just think that's a real key to operating a business and operating really a life, especially once you have kids. Oh my goodness. Then, and I'm not sure if you can hear this, but if you can, I apologize. One of my chickens just laid an egg. They've been laying eggs and not where they're supposed to, but it's in a spot that's kind of close to my office. And they just do this like, yay, we laid an egg clucking thing. So they're fine, but someone laid an egg and they're celebrating. Okay. So number 6 is to focus on community. And this is not order of importance. I should have said that from the beginning as well. So focusing on the community. Yes, in the beginning, it was like creating this great product. The meal plans, like we really focus on them, but like the community is key, right? And for us, a lot of that is our Facebook group. So for those of you that are in there, thank you. But over the years, just like being able to have conversations with the PrepDish community, that has been something that's really kept us going. Like if that wasn't there, PrepDish wouldn't be here. So really having a community aspect. And when I say conversations, it's not just me conversing, but like watching people that are using the plans talking together. Like, I mean, that community is just so cool to see that evolve. Lesson number 7 is patience. It takes time. So this shows up in a lot of different places. But the example I came up with is it takes time for people to even come into the habit of using the meal plans, right? Like, even for myself. So I use them, I use the recipes, I did the meal plans, but I don't think until I had kids that I never relied on them in the way that I do now. Like now that I have kids and like I do the meals, but we also have an au pair. And so like she's using everyone in the house is using them. And like we rely on them. Like if I didn't have that grocery list to look at each week, it just, it really simplifies my life. And I've seen this interestingly with like friends that I have, PrepDish now. So 10 years, it's been around for 10 years. I've talked about it for 10 years, but I don't talk about it, right? Like at length, I'm not going, pushing it on my friends like, oh, you need this in your life. Like they know I do it. And it's been interesting over the 10 years that certain friends will pick it up and like, they'll call me up and like, oh yeah, I use PrepDish now. Or like, oh, my family, like we love your recipes. And, maybe that was year 7 and I've known this person for 15 years. So it's just kind of funny how over time people will pick it up. And I want to, if you're listening to this podcast, you may or may not be using PrepDish, but, maybe over time you keep listening and you're like, I think right now is a good time in my life to use it. So if that's you, you're not alone. Like there's plenty of people that just kind of, I know, follow us, like what we're doing, but for whatever reason, it's not a fit at the time. And then, over time it is. Number 8, lesson learned. The power of a meal plan. So it really is a solution that works for people. So this is the coolest thing of like, it works for people. They have to almost discover, this kind of builds on the, people come around to it, but they have to discover it on their own almost, right? Like, and that's why, on this podcast, I'm always giving you like, hey, do the free trial, go use the link, use the free trial, try it out for yourself. That's really the best way to discover it. And then to build on that too, I talked in the beginning of, look, the product, like what I offer, my vision, like that hasn't changed in 10 years. And to me, that's the power of a really strong meal plan, right? Like looking back at the plans, and we did this, we look back at the plans that I created like that first year or two. a lot of them not so different, they're not so different. So the power of having just a really good meal plan has worked out well for Prep Dish. Like that's why we're still here. Lesson number 9, enjoy. So this is something over time that has definitely I've gotten better at, right? Like in the beginning, I think there was a lot of stress. Like it was creating something and, fires to put out. I felt like there was, just things that I was like waiting to make sure they worked. And now I can really enjoy it a little more, right? And I feel like almost with kids, this is kind of the same way, right? Like you have this newborn in the beginning, it's like you want to enjoy the moment and you kind of do, but you're just trying to survive. And then like, as they get older, you can kind of like sit back and you're like, oh, like I'm actually enjoying this. This is fun. And like, let it kind of be. And even with just us and the team, and I think goes back to the systems and having things in place and figuring out how to like let things run. But we're really like enjoying the work and we're not just like caught up in the stress of it and like, oh, there's always going to be this fire and like dreading something. Like, I don't think there's a lot of dread that happens anymore. I think there's a lot of enjoyment in what's in the work that we're producing. And then lesson number 10, and maybe this one is like saving the best for last, but making a difference matters. With Prep Dish, and I think I mentioned this in the past, but we start each of our team meetings by reading a happy customer share is what we call it. But, reading a customer that's either written into our customer service or maybe posted on social media about how Prep Dish is impacting their life. And that's meaningful to me. That's meaningful to the team. That's why we do the work we do. So really knowing that making a difference matters. And I think this is a lesson that, what you do matters is important no matter what your work is, like kind of going back to that and knowing that. So like, how I wanted to talk a little bit about like, how could you translate this? And that, I think that's having, like us sharing those happy customer shares, but like keeping those around so you can access those when you need them. If you have kids, knowing that you're making a difference. So keeping that special card that they wrote you or artwork that they made for you and like having that visible is just a really good thing to kind of remind you of why you're doing what you're doing and that it matters. So I just want to say thank you. Thank you for being there. I love having you around. We at Prep Dish enjoy doing the work that we do, and we appreciate the opportunity to serve all of you in whatever way that might be. One last thing, a quick reminder that if you want to try out our time-saving meal prep meal plans that have stood the test of time, they've been here for over 10 years, you can go to prepdish.com/MPM and do a 2-week free trial. That is also linked in the show notes, but it's just prepdish.com/MPM. Try us out for 2 weeks for free and see if it is a fit for you. That is all for this week. I will be back again next week for another episode.